Well, this got it started yesterday. Jarrett Bell, who posted an item on Wednesday where Sean Payton had some very candid criticism of the NFL as it relates to educating players when it comes to gambling, with words like shameful and embarrassing, and he pointed out that owners can own pieces of DraftKings and FanDuel. That was just the appetizer to what came yesterday. The main course got dropped yesterday via that tweet from Jarrett Bell. And oh my God, Sean Payton obliterated former Broncos coach Nathaniel Hackett to the point where my first thought, Myles, was, he thought he was off the record. And Jarrett Bell thought he was on the record. That was my first thought. And we haven't heard that in the past 24 hours. So I assume that's not going to be the excuse. That was all off the record. But that's what I thought. It was so harsh and so unprecedented to have a coach go, and we'll get into the comments, but to have a coach go after another coach in the NFL with that kind of vitriol, I thought this was an off-the-record conversation and there was a miscommunication between reporter and subject.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a joke when I saw one of the quotes from the article. I was like, oh, well, this is an interpretation of what Sean Payton said. And I clicked on it and I read it and I was like, no, that's a direct quote. Wow. Because usually you hear platitudes from coaches, right? Like when Sean McVay replaced Jeff Fisher, it was, oh, I wasn't here. I don't know how they were coached, but this is how we're going to do it now. And it was most of that for the entire 2017 season. This is something entirely different. I've never seen anything like this before.
Well, and there's a couple of different reasons for it. First of all, you don't want to unnecessarily stir up someone that you will encounter at some point on the football field. You don't want to give them any extra incentive to want to kick your ass. It's the old Lou Holtz approach. Everybody that Lou Holtz always faced was the greatest team he's ever seen. And the other side of it, too, is it's a closed industry with 32 shops. And if you start pissing off people at the other shops, you may need them at some point. Now, Sean Payton may be at the juncture of his career where this is it for him. This is my last job. I don't care who I piss off. I don't care what I say. I don't need Robert Saleh. I don't need Nathaniel Hackett at some point later in my career. I got my money, and I'm getting a lot more of it from the Walmart clan over the course of the next 5 years. I'm out. I'm done. I'm 60. See you later. I'll piss off whoever I want. So there is a certain freedom in removing yourself from the incestuous nature of this guy's working with this guy and this guy needs a job from this guy and these two are tied together. This completely throws that out the window, that level of professional courtesy that you see, because you may need that person that you're taking aim at. And yeah, some coaches either don't care or have evolved past the point where they need to care. And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't hear the kind of stuff we heard yesterday. Most coaches can't afford to just burn any possible bridge that they may have to some other job at some point.
Right. And what's funny, and, we were saying this on the text chain, I mean, Sean Payton was on Fox all last year, and I don't think that he said anything that was like 25% as this incendiary as these comments that he made to Jarrett
Didn't have
Bell.
the job yet. Didn't have the job yet. Now he's got the job. Now he's got the guaranteed contract. So here's some of the stuff that he said. And this all relates to why things went so poorly last year for the Denver Broncos. They bring in Russell Wilson. Everything's great. The Broncos are going to be great. Everything's awesome. And we know what happened. And said Payton, there's so much dirt around that. 20 dirty hands for what was allowed, tolerated in the frickin' training rooms and meeting rooms, the offense. I don't know Nathaniel Hackett. A lot of people had dirt on their hands. It wasn't just Russell. He didn't just flip. He still has it. This BS that he's hit a wall, shoot, they couldn't get a play in. They were 29th in the league in pre-snap penalties on both sides of the ball. And then this one, everyone's got a little stink on their hands. It's not just Russell. It was a poor offensive line. It might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. Wow. I mean, that's the one you never hear. That's the one that never gets said. That is completely and totally gratuitous, and I would submit unnecessary. Why do you need to say that publicly? It's one thing to say it privately to get your players to turn the page from last year to this year. to tell the world that Nathaniel Hackett might have done one of the worst head coaching jobs in the history of the NFL, I believe it serves no purpose. We're going to delve into the psychology of this later. I think it serves no purpose to say that publicly. It really doesn't. What does it gain for you to utter those words anywhere but in the meeting room, in the locker room, in a place where it's only heard by the guys who need to hear it?
Or off the record, right? I mean, that's one of those quotes that kind of made me think the same thing that you did, where it's like, whoa, this is a lot. And that's the one I saw where I'm thinking, oh, this is an interpretation of what Sean Payton said. And it's not an interpretation. Sean Payton literally said that. And the fact is, I don't really think he's wrong, right? I mean, I don't know what in the world we said over the course of however many shows we did last year when Nathaniel Hackett was still the head coach of the Denver Broncos. But, I mean,
I know what I said. We can find the tape. Oh, I thought it was shit.
Yeah, well, sorry. Exactly. So,
sorry,
thank you for yelling that over my comments there. But you're not wrong. I mean, I was going to say, you and I constantly said he was in over his skis. He was at a position that he clearly was not ready for, right? And whether or not he's going to be ready to be a head coach at some point else in his career, we don't know. But that was not the job for him, right? The Peter principle, whatever you want to call it. He advanced too far and it just did not work. And we saw it from week one on. It just was never going to work there for Nathaniel Hackett, which is why he got fired before they even completed the season. So again, it's not like Sean Payton is all that wrong about what he said, but like you said, Mike, it is a little past the line of what purpose does this serve to say this publicly to the entire world, whereas, you know, you could say this in a meeting or off the record or whatever it happens to be, and the right people are going to get the message.
Oh, it was a slow motion train wreck from the get-go. Week 1 at Seattle. That ridiculous confusion at the end of the game, and they played the percentages for, what was it, a 75-yard field goal? I mean, it was just so stupid. And we all knew it was stupid. I mean, we all knew how stupid it was. Like, everybody but Nathaniel Hackett knew how stupid it was. And that's what made it so rare, because on what topic does anyone universally agree in sports or anything nowadays? It was universal agreement in the aftermath of that game that Nathaniel Hackett didn't know what the hell he was doing. And then after week 2, remember, they went out and they hired a coach to coach the coach. They brought in Jerry Romsberg, I think. I can't even remember now. I'm trying to wipe the whole year.
You don't remember Sheriff Jerry Rosberg? He came in and cleaned up the town after Nathaniel Hackett got fired. Jerry Rosberg, baby. Woo!
Throw in a vowel. Rosberg, Romsberg, potato. Regardless, they had to go get a coach to coach the coach. It was a disaster, and we all saw it happening. But you're right. It wasn't like Sean Payton was on Fox every week saying, man, this is one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. But he had no reason to say it then. Now he's got a reason to say it. And part of the problem, too, was in comes Russell Wilson, and now, like, it's the Russell Wilson experience in full bloom. That's what he had wanted in Seattle. He wanted the offense to run through him. So he rolls into town as superstar with all these other members of his entourage. And Payton's already talked about that. There is an element of repetition to the idea of all the stuff that was going on. Because I remember back during Super Bowl week, that's when we started to see quotes from Payton that all that stuff isn't going to happen anymore. All these other people, they ain't going to be here. They're not going to be around here. And he was touching on that and the idea that there were others beyond Nathaniel Hackett who enabled and allowed this. And that's significant because some of those people are still there, which makes it a little awkward when we see the next quote to Jarrett Bell. It wasn't Russell's fault. It was the parents who allowed it. That's not an incrimination on Russell, but an incrimination of the head coach, the GM, the president, and everybody else who watched it happen, including ownership. Didn't say that, but I will, including ownership. Now, a quarterback having an office and a place to watch film is normal, but all those things get magnified when you're losing, and that other stuff, I've never heard of it. We're not doing that. Now, George Payton was the GM who traded for Russell and allowed all this to happen last year. And I remember hearing around the time of the draft, hey, watch out, George Payton may be out in Denver. And I poked around a little bit, and I was like, oh, no, that's not happening. He's great. Well, if I'm George Payton, I'm starting to explore the housing market in Denver to see when I should put that sign in my front yard and get full value for the house I bought out there. That is an ominous freaking comment to throw him in there, to throw the team president who just got there in there, and to indirectly throw ownership in there. He's castigating everyone who was there, even though 90% of them are still there, Myles.
Yeah, that part too is what really caught my eye, especially when you were talking about George Payton. And when somebody is the general manager of a franchise, that is one of the premier spots, right? So if you're going to be the head coach and you're going to criticize your GM that publicly, that's going to be a thing. And that's going to now be a story throughout their entire time together, whether it's just this season, whether it's just a couple more weeks, whether it happens to be years. I mean, that is something to me that really, really stands out. Because look, if you're the head coach, you might not interact with the team president all that much. You know, you don't depend on the team president for player evaluation and stuff like that, because the team president is running the business side, right? You interact with ownership, certainly, which is probably part of why you didn't have ownership in there in those comments, because they obviously are paying Sean Payton's salary. But when you're talking about the GM, and you're relying on the GM for player evaluation and player acquisition in a lot of ways, that's a very, very pointed criticism. And I can understand why that might have ruffled some feathers in the building.
Well, but Myles, even though he did not specifically mention ownership was involved last year. They had just gotten on the scene in
bought
August.
The team, yeah. Right.
But when Sean Payton specifically includes this phrase in his comment, everybody else who watched it all happen. I mean, what he's saying is, where are the grown-ups here? Where are the adults? Was no one able to recognize what was happening and how it was happening and how we were allowing this to happen and how we created this mess? Why did no one stand up and say, we can't have this? So he comes through the door and he's taking a flamethrower to the place. And he's saying through this comment, the rest of you are idiots. How did you all let this happen? And again, that thing, if you're going to say that, if you're going to have the nerve to go in there and say to George Payton, to Monty Leach, the team president, Greg Penner, the CEO, and everyone else in ownership, Condi Rice, you name it, what the hell was wrong with you people last year? What were you all drunk? Were you all asleep? Are you all stupid? Why did you let this happen? It's one thing to have that kind of attitude in the building, but when you take it out of the building, when you allow that to, I mean, and hey, I mean, look, I'm going to go back to an attitude I judge thing happening. I said if this was any other coach, we would be saying this guy has lost his damn mind. So I think it's fair to say, Sean Payton has a certain amount of equity built up. He's got a track record. If it was any other coach, we would be saying this person has lost his damn mind.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, I think he didn't necessarily say this, but like when you're talking about everything that went down and when you're talking about ownership there, I mean, you just said it, like they came in August. So a lot of these practices that were with Russell Wilson, with the entourage, if you want to call it that, in the building and all of that different stuff, that had been established before they even got there. Within the offseason program, when they're starting to install everything and you have Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach and it's this and it's that. And it's like, well, you can try to say we're the adults in the room, but if you just get there in August, it's kind of difficult to then be like, wait a minute, this isn't right, especially when you've never led an NFL franchise before. Now, that doesn't necessarily excuse it all, but right. I think that is a factor in it. So to me, the point of criticism there is much more at the general manager and at George Payton than it is in terms of the other people that are involved in it.
I agree with you to an extent, but I I would submit that you at least concede that ownership, to use one of your phrases, caught a stray from that comment. At a minimum, they caught a stray.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll take it a step farther than that, though, because I said all last year, these Walmart people, Greg Penner, the CEO of Walmart, these are titans of industry who are in a position to fully understand organizational dynamics, professional psychological interactions, how these things work, how to get the most out of people. And you could argue, given the accomplishments that they have had in private business, when they walk through the door and they see what's going on here, at some point, one of them, between Greg Penner, his father-in-law, Rob Walton, his wife, Carrie Walton Penner, one of them is going to say, something doesn't seem right here. And then you throw Condi Rice into the mix, who's been at the highest levels of government. Are we handling this the right way? And at least Condi Rice has been around football. She worked, kind of arm in arm with David Shaw at Stanford, and she's been interested in football for years, and she caught a stray on this as well because she watched it all happen. I'm just trying to help everybody understand, and myself too, in real time as we break this down. He blew it all up. I mean, he's going after everybody on this, either by name or indirectly.
Yes, but at the same time, I mean, if you buy a team in August and then they have all these things that basically you're not going to be able to change all that much between August and, let's call it December or January when the season is going to be over. You're kind of locked in to what you're going to be for that season by August. Right. So even if
Jerry
you get in there,
could have come in and told him to do some things differently. They brought in the coach.
I know, but I'm saying, okay, so if you get in there in August, and then I don't know whose prompting it was to hire Sheriff Jerry Rossberg, but then he comes in, and then by the end of the calendar year, Nathaniel Hackett's gone. So it's not like they sat on their hands and did nothing for over a year, right? Were they patient, and did they let things play out a little bit? Yes. But in some ways, you kind of have to do that when you get there in August and things are already locked in,
Myles, you're overcomplicating it. Payton said everybody else who watched it all happen. Yes,
I know.
My point is, it doesn't matter whether or not the It doesn't matter whether or not the flamethrower that Payton took to the whole organization, including ownership, is justified. What matters is he did it.
Okay. Yes.
He did it. Yes. When he says everybody else who watched it all happen, he did it. So that makes it even more delicate for him moving forward because he lumped in people who could make your argument. We just got here in August. What the hell are we supposed to do? Right. We just bought the damn team. We don't know what's going on. I thought this was normal. I don't know. I've been selling diapers and Frosted Flakes and car batteries for my whole life. I haven't run a football team. So I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact when he says everybody else who watched it all happen, he is throwing dirt at ownership, all ownership. And Greg Penner, and I keep coming back to Condi Rice because she's the one who at least has the football knowledge. So anyway, I don't want us to get too far afield with this. The point is, He nuked everybody in those comments in his own building and out of his building.
Yes. On that, we do agree. But I do think it's not, I don't know. I guess I am overcomplicating it a bit and saying that, okay, well, it's not like they didn't act. They did. They fired Nathaniel Hackett before the end of the season, and then they brought in Sean Payton. So, I mean, at a certain point, what else were they going to do?
Well, right. But they watched it all happen, and they let it all happen. And his implication in all this is somebody could have stood up and intervened and stopped it. And again, right or wrong, that's what he said. So that's part of the issue that he's going to have to deal with as we move forward. And there's been silence from the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton in the 24 hours since these comments landed. I don't know what the media schedule is when he next has a press conference. He spoke to reporters on Wednesday. I would say between now and Sunday, we'll probably hear from him again. And I got a feeling this is probably going to be a pretty hot topic of conversation when Sean Payton or others from the Broncos have to speak. It was a hot topic yesterday as the New York Jets provided some commentary to the situation because it wasn't just Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator of the Jets that pulled that team into this mix. It was Payton commenting on this concept of winning the offseason. It doesn't happen often where an NFL team or organization gets embarrassed, and that happened here. Part of it was their own fault relative to spending so much expletive time trying to win the offseason. The PR, the pomp and circumstance, marching people around and all this stuff. We're not doing any of that. The Jets did that this year. You watch. Hard Knocks. All of it. I can see it coming. Remember when Dan Snyder put that dream team together? I was at the Giants. I was a young coach. I thought, how are we going to compete with them? Deion Sanders is there now. That team won 8 games or whatever. So listen, just put the work in. Yes, Sean. Very good advice. Very sage. Very wise. Just put the work in. When I saw that, I thought, yes. Why are you saying all this? This is all stuff that should be confined to behind closed doors, not out in the open. Because now, week 5, here come the Jets. The Jets, who otherwise are swamped with the Bills twice, the Dolphins twice, the Patriots twice, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Eagles. The Broncos game was a rest stop as part of this marathon, this gauntlet they have to run. Now, all of a sudden, you got the full attention of the Jets come week 5. Now, all of a sudden, a game that I would have looked at that day and said, now that's must-see TV when the Jets and the Broncos play, all because of what Sean Payton had to say.
Yeah, that's true. And the funny thing, too, is, they're doing Hard Knocks. They didn't want to do Hard Knocks. They famously did not want to do Hard Knocks. I mean, everybody knows that they were basically forced into doing Hard Knocks, and they've got to put these provisions around like, hey, we don't want them showing this and that. And, every team gets final approval of what's on Hard Knocks. But I think that the criticism of them for being excited that Aaron freaking Rodgers is going to come in and be their quarterback, like, yeah, you should be excited about that. I'm sorry. And to criticize them for being on Hard Knocks, I think that that's a little ridiculous.
Well, but let me say this. And you're right. They didn't want to do Hard Knocks. But with the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, this is where there, I think, becomes tension within an organization. Because you've got the business side of it that wants to fully embrace the hype and profit from it. You've got the football side that would be inclined to say, let's tap the brakes a bit. Let's not let this get out of control. I think back to your Cleveland Browns of 2019, the year after they kind of rose up for the first time in forever, and the expectations went through the roof. And I said in this very chair, you need somebody to control these expectations, because it's going to be perceived as a failure if you don't get to the playoffs and maybe advance a round or two. And you need somebody to be saying, we haven't proven anything. We haven't done anything. Robert Saleh in New York should arguably be saying, we haven't been to the playoffs. We haven't done a damn thing. We don't know how this is going to work. Look at how all these supposed great teams of the past have failed to fulfill their potential. We got to compete with everyone on our schedule. Have you seen our schedule? Have you seen who we have to play? Now, he had Sean Payton say all that stuff for him. Robert Saleh didn't say any of that yesterday. Here's some of what he had to say when he had a chance to respond to Sean Payton's criticism of the Jets as this year's dream team.
Well, I'm not going to acknowledge Sean on that. He's been in the league a while. He can say whatever the hell he wants. But as far as what we have going on here, it's I kind of live by saying, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. So hate away. It's obviously we're doing something right if you got to talk about us when we don't play you till week 4, and I'm good with it. But the guys in our locker room, they've earned everything that's coming to them. And really excited about what's going on. I think Hackett's doing a phenomenal job here. The coaching staff is doing a phenomenal job, and we're focused on us. I get it. There's a lot of external noise. There's a lot of people who are hating on us. There's a lot of people looking for us to fail. There's a lot of crows pecking at our neck. But all you can do is spread your wings, keep flying high until those crows fall off and suffocate from the inability to breathe. It's a whole other analogy I'll get into later. But really, really, really excited about the group we have, the coaching that's going on, and but I'm going to keep our focus on us and making sure that we're prepared every single day to do the best we can and learn from our past and grow with every moment that we have.
He's just rattling off cliches there to see which one's going to work. And his saying, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping, so hate away. It doesn't really fit on a T-shirt. It needs to be a little more concise to really have the impact, right? It's a little too wordy. Good sayings aren't very wordy. But I get his point, and you're right. They're relevant now. They're relevant. They have Aaron Rodgers. They think they're onto something pretty good. But really, there hasn't been much of an attempt by the Jets to tamp down those expectations. And I think that's part of the organizational tension. The business side, raise that bar. Raise that bar and count that cash. That would look good on a T-shirt. That's what's going on with the Jets. Somebody's got to be the adult in the room there and say, we haven't done a GD thing here. We haven't been to a playoffs. We fell apart last year. So Anyway, hey, week 5. I can't wait. Too early to flex it to Sunday night. We got the Jets on Sunday night, week 4, against the Chiefs. They're not going to be able to catch their breath. They're going to be ready to go the next week against the Broncos, and the Broncos are going to be ready for them.
Yeah, I mean, they should be. Look, I mean, I think what Robert Saleh said was decent, to try and rally his team, right? And that's something that he's done from the podium before. Last year when he was talking about receipts, and I guess we can have the receipts now from last year because they ended up falling apart. So that's one thing. But, when he's like, oh, I'm not going to acknowledge Sean, and then he has this entire answer that basically does acknowledge everything that he said. It's a rhetorical device at that point. You're talking about crows and pecking at your neck and flying so high that they can't breathe and all these different things. Like you said, it's different cliches. Maybe one sticks against the wall and it actually works. I don't know, but I think that there's reason certainly to be excited if you are a Jets fan. But you do have to tamper that with, oh, yeah, by the way, we weren't really all that good last year. What did we do? Big Jets. What have we done? Not a damn thing. Come on. Let's I think that might be a better way of embracing it.
That's the approach that one-time Jets coach Lou Holtz would have indeed taken. And yes, once upon a time, for 1 year, he was the head coach of the New York Jets. Billy Turner, who was with the Broncos last year and is now with the New York Jets, went to social media and we got to do a better job blocking out that word. I can see that word, baby. I see that word. But before that word, we need a new Sharpie. Our Sharpie is out of ink. Seems like someone started training camp and is trying to soften the blow after realizing what he's in for this season. And I wouldn't be surprised if Billy Turner kind of picked that up in the locker room yesterday. See, there may be a difference between what Robert Saleh said publicly and what he may have said in the locker room. And it's possible he said in the locker room while trying to explain the attack on their offensive coordinator, Payton thinks he's going to lose this year. Payton thinks he's going to have a long year, and he wants to set up the blame now that it's on last year. That last year was so bad, it kept me from winning this year.
Maybe, but he also said that he would be ticked off if the team didn't make the playoffs this year. So, I don't know. I guess that it is in some ways trying to do that and trying to set this up or trying to set that up.
He'll be ticked off really because they did it because it was so bad last year. That's why I'm ticked off. Right. This team should make the playoffs, but they were so bad last year and it was so toxic and negative and everything it shouldn't have been. I couldn't overcome it in 1 year. Don't blame me.
Yes. Yeah. Well, at a certain point, then, then who's standing up or not standing up and letting it all happen when Sean Payton's the head coach then, right? Aren't you supposed to be the guy where the buck stops if you are now the leader of men that is the for the Denver Broncos and all this stuff? I don't know, man. I think when Sean Payton said this, he had to know that this was going to get some sort of reaction, right? And so maybe he does it because he's trying to say, look, all of the stuff that was last year is last year, right? I'm leaving that in the past. And now we have to rally around each other and rally around ourselves because, look, it wasn't your fault what happened last year, right? Everything that happened last year is the fault of somebody who is no longer in the building. So my expectations are that we are going to be a damn good team. We're going to be a playoff team because all that crap last year with the 20 dirty hands, those dirty hands are out of the building, except for, George Payton and also the team president and ownership. So like that to me is kind of where I see it. And it's kind of why he might have done it. But again, I don't necessarily know why you got to do that publicly in a newspaper.
Right, exactly. These are all messages that are best communicated privately. What is the strategic reason for taking that frustration public? And as I said earlier, if it was any other coach, I'd be saying he's lost his damn mind. But it's Sean Payton. He gets the benefit of the doubt, Super Bowl champion, great offensive mind, very strategic, very deliberate, very intentional. And that's where, even though Sean Payton said nothing yesterday, that's where the game becomes media manipulation. And when your friends in the media begin to take up for you and explain why you did what you did. And there's a collection of tweets that have been publicized by the, what's the Twitter account? The Cool Your Jets Twitter account. And when you look at these, it's almost like they all got the same phone call. They're all operating off the same sheet of music. Everything he does is intentional. Everything he does is deliberate. Nothing is accidental. This is all the talking point of he's trying to boost his team. He's trying to make his team better. He's doing what he's doing for a reason. There's method to the madness. Instead of people saying, has he lost his mind? Jeff Duncan, who covered the Saints throughout the entire time Sean Payton was the coach. Folks, Sean Payton is building up the confidence of the quarterback, letting him know that he's got his back. If there's collateral damage in the way of completing that mission, trust me, he doesn't care. This is all about his team and his quarterback, nothing more, nothing less. So I guess the argument would be that Sean Payton said all those things privately, but for some reason decided that to properly prop up his quarterback, he needed to take it public. Like, that's the unexplained angle here. Why did all this stuff have to be public? Anything he said to Jarrett Bell, he could have just said behind closed doors and avoided stirring up the Jets, stirring up Nathaniel Hackett, and having people say, if it was anybody but Sean Payton, we'd say this guy's lost his damn mind.
Well, I think that there is also a way to prop up your quarterback in the media through, whatever columnist you want, whether it's Jarrett Bell or somebody else, without also saying that this was one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL, right? I mean, you can say, I don't know what he was taught last year, or I don't know what the scheme was, or I don't know what blah, blah, blah. But I can tell you that this year, I firmly believe that Russell Wilson will be the guy that we know that he can be, right? And I think that also props up your quarterback without having to be that particularly incendiary. And yeah, I guess that because of Sean Payton's status as an NFL head coach, right? I mean, somebody who has won a Super Bowl, somebody who was there for so long, and you understand kind of some of the psychology behind what he's doing. He has more of a latitude, more of a longer rope, let's call it, to do something like this, to say something like this. Because if it's, I don't know, give me the first year head coach, like if Jonathan Gannon came in and he was like, I don't know what Cliff Kingsbury was doing, and this is one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL, we'll all be like, what the absolute bleep? Like, coming from you? Oh, what in the world? Like, it makes it a little bit different, I think. But it's still like just one of those things where you're like, oh my goodness, this is a lot.
But you know what? There's a way to accomplish the same thing without being quite so blunt and harsh. What Sean Payton could have said is, look, I've got the benefit of experience. I've been around. I've seen some things. I've been a first-year head coach. Last year in Denver, the problem was there was too much first-year GM, first-year head coach, although Payton was in his second year. But there's a lot of new. Sure. There's a lot of people trying to adjust to things on the fly. We got new ownership. We got a new quarterback. in a new city. We got a new coach-GM relationship. There's just too many things that were new and too many people maybe trying to get comfortable in their new surroundings that no one was in position to look at the big picture and ask, is everything working? And so that happens sometimes. We've seen that happen before in football where there's too much new. That would have been a way to do it that doesn't nuke everybody. Just say too much new. Last year entailed too much new. And you know what? That's right. That's a great explanation for it. Because we look, anytime anybody's new at a job, think of your first year at any job you've ever had. You show up for a new place to work. You're dealing with new people all the time. You've got a new office. You have to adjust. Your body, your brain, everything about you has to get used to this. So when everyone is all new, it's hard to have that connective tissue that pulls everyone together and helps everyone understand what we need to do to be on the same page. There are going to be issues. There are going to be problems. That would have been a way to explain it that, would have been far less entertaining. We would have had far fewer page views on the story, so I'm glad he didn't do it that way. But it would have avoided this mess that Sean Payton's going to have to clean up, either indirectly through friends in the media or directly whenever he speaks to the media.
Well, I was going to say, but if he soft pedals it like that, then we're not talking about it. I mean, that's a nothing burger story that maybe we cover, maybe we don't. And then we just kind of all move on. And I guess that in some ways, that's what you want if you're a head coach, right? I mean, ask Sean McDermott if he regrets saying that he was very concerned about Stephon Diggs in the middle of June, right? We're still talking about that. I just made him catch a stray in a segment that we're doing on Sean Payton because it was such a weird turn of phrase in the middle of June. So everything that a head coach says can be dissected, parsed, all these different things. And for somebody who in Sean Payton, who has been a part of the NFL for as long as he has, who was a head coach for as long as he has, who spent last year doing media for Fox every day. And it's not like he doesn't know that his comments, whatever they may be, are going to be blown up. So this was very interesting. I will put it like that, just because you don't often see head coach comments go this far, go this attacking, and be something that we can talk about for as long as we've talked about it.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.